Given that the learning lunches, for those of you that haven't joined a learning lunch before, they're fairly breakneck. The idea is really to connect people and to give an opportunity to celebrate some of the really amazing work that's going on in our field. Today, we have Ann Finlayson, the CEO of SEED, Sustainability and Environmental Education, with us. And she is a very experienced educator with awards for her evaluation work. She's developed strategies, assessment strategies for park rangers, museum educators, geography teachers, and since the 2000s has worked on whole school approaches to sustainability, particularly in audit designs for WWF, the DFE, and UNESCO. SEED are currently exploring action competencies with Dr. Paul Varr, Gloucestershire University, for both students and teachers. So, having worked in schools and large charities and small, she's very familiar with the challenges and asks that educators face in these different settings. But what Anne is most interested in, perhaps, is the philosophy behind learning for sustainability and how this can be translated into assessment and why. So, Anne, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you for that introduction, Kathy. Yeah, I mean, for me, evidence is crucial. But I think I've given it a little bit away by saying the next line, which is especially when aiming to make effective and long-term change, because that is of interest to Seed, which moves me out of, if you like, the sort of learning outcomes and the stuff I did as a teacher. But it has, as I hope you'll see, affected what we're doing and why we're doing it. Um, but you are probably gathering evidence. I mean, this won't be new to any of you because you'll be gathering evidence for all sorts of people. And of course, the first one we always think about if you're a charity is funders. You could be gathering evidence for Charity Commission. So there's reports to write and money and the monies to understand. You could be gathering evidence for advocacy, and that might be different from influencing policy. That might be policy in an institution rather than, let's say, in a political sphere. You could be gathering evidence for learning your own or to see what other people are learning. And of course, you could be gathering evidence to prove you're good at your job, which, quite a few people have had to do in their past, and personal development reviews, and understanding whether you're doing your KPIs. So I wondered if it would be useful to get you thinking about what evidence you're gathering currently, and put it in the chat. So what evidence are you gathering currently, and what are you gathering it for? So if you could just add those things into the chat, that would be good. Um, of course, there are lots and lots of words to do with uh, evidence, impact, KPIs, smart objectives. I mean, these are from the world of business. Others are from the world of, development, for example, theories of change, or logical frameworks, or log frames, as some people know them. But there's things like objectives, outcomes. There's also things like transformation, replicability, scale. That's all from sociology mostly. But it's becoming quite important. It looks, when you go online, it looks quite important now in the world of medicine. Correlation, attitudinal analysis. There's a lot of statistics in this. Social impact assessments. So, I mean, there's a really argument that ESD and moving towards sustainability is about sociology as much as it is about education. Various learning taxonomies. My favorite, scientific control, i.e., where you have a control and the one that you're actually trying to influence. Hierarchical regressions. Those are the statisticians amongst you will probably do that. But there's also direct evidence, there's circumstantial evidence, there's primary evidence, there's documentary evidence, and then one of my favorites, there's some lovely meta-analyses out there. And of course, in the world of research and universities, there's not just meta-analysis, but things like peer review, etc. Some of you may or may not know about the EEF, which is the Education Endowment Fund, who recommend to the Department of Education in the UK what is showing good evidence of practice that could be well adopted in schools or colleges. They recommend this following book about research methods and methodologies in education, but it very much looks at how a teacher might be evaluating their own practice, but also then how an institution might be evaluating what's going on in the school. Um, but then I found another paper from them, which was given at a conference not that long ago, which is all about talking about how you go from evidence to moving to scale, and then beyond that to systems level approaches. I find that quite interesting because that's hopefully where we are thinking about in education. Um, but there are other people who are thinking about this, and the list is really too long. But as Kathy and I have just chatted, there's no one framework or one model or one tool that is going to do it for you for ESD. There are two reasons for that. One is different interpretations of ESD and culturally different ways that might look around the world, which is why I put this one in here about advancing assessment thinking in education for sustainable development, based in South Africa with the inimitable Hyla Lotz Sisitka. And they've been doing some great stuff as well on whole school approach too. So it's hard to actually come up with one idea or one thing that might work. The one I found that was quite interesting was looking at the sociology approach. It began in Dartington, and then Nesta took up this model from Dartington Sociology Research Group, which I don't think exists anymore. But the five levels are still the same. And this I discovered was put online by a funder. These are the five levels that a funder uses. So the first one is this idea, you've got a project design, you've got an idea of what you want to do, you know why, and you know what you want to test. Level two, and that's the kind of stuff that a lot of funders will fund. Level two is you actually are recording some change. Level three is you're understanding who you're recording that change with versus people who are not doing it, or you're understanding what segment of society you're looking at, and maybe you need to look at another segment of society. Level four is where it all starts to get complicated in level five. And this is this idea of being replicated. So the question here is it being done because you are the person leading it and no one else can do it? Or can someone else pick up that project and do it? Or some other organization, can they pick it up and do it? And that's what we mean by replicated. And there are different methods of evaluating at the replication level. And that's quite a hard thing to do for many organizations or people because we're all very much creating our own models here and our own things. And then seeing if someone else can do it is a bit challenging. And then level five is the scaling up. Can someone else, somewhere else, with other people do this? And therefore, can it be scaled up? And my issue with this model is that it does look a bit linear. It does look a bit instrumentalist. And as though there's just some things that you just need to do and you will get to scaling up. And we're not going to go into it, but you can get a false positive at almost any level in here. So I'm not entirely certain that this works. However, I think the idea about thinking about replication and scaling up are really interesting. So we at Seed, we use evidence for a variety of reasons. This one is for encouraging people to think about the problem and why we need to do our own program called Young Changemakers. And this data comes from all over the place, and it's usually with really big cohorts of people who are doing it. For example, the 48% of 37,000 students globally, which is number four, which is from the world's largest nation and UNICEF. It's a huge grouping. Say they wanted to wanted to use more or develop more real world skills. So we use um, various methods to try and build our understanding. And we don't have one method and we don't have one model, but we develop a whole range of ways of gathering both quantitative and qualitative information that we hopefully can use. So it's a bit of a mixed method. But our goal is to look at things like agency and developing this sense of hope and resilience. And mostly we use action learning for that, and we monitor and evaluate people's responses to that. Um, we also offer a whole school approach, institution approach tools, and we do attitudinal surveys. We do a lot of that pre and post, and sometimes during, but mostly pre and post interventions that you'll all be very familiar with. We use a lot, because of action learning, we use a lot of reflection tools. And this is giving you or giving us a lot of documentary evidence of attitudes, values, challenges that people are finding, all of that kind of thing. Um, in terms of, trying to show that people are connected, not just to their peers in their class, but that schools are connected to their community. We do quite a lot of that. And again, we monitor how that works. It can be quite challenging to do. It's something that schools don't feel that confident about doing. We use impact and capacity building assessment tools. So, for example, these competencies. So, we use Paul Vare's Round a Sense of Purpose for teachers because we're not really training them and we're just seeing if they, as they co-learn with the students, they're developing new competencies in sustainability education. And then we use the ACE survey, which is action competencies for in education for students. So, they're self-evaluations. And there's a big thing that we do about communicating and celebrating because the goal, I mean, as much as celebration is good, the goal is still to get more of these stories that we hope will come out. One of my team once did this impact diagram. I think it's wonderful, but it gives me severe anxiety because it's huge. And how on earth, in this multivariate world, can you possibly measure all of that and start to think about it? So you have to get a bit focused. So we focus by thinking about who we're going to be evaluating or gathering evidence from, what it is that we want to gather evidence about, but we have to go back to saying why. And so for us, we start with some principles of education for sustainability, which some we've built on, but some have been around a long time now. So the first one for us is action learning because the whole idea is about this ongoing learning and reflection and repeating yourself. Very participatory, systems thinking, not systems mapping. It's an issue I have with teachers sometimes because when I say, we're going to do systems thinking, what examples, worked in when you did this module, they will go back to the water cycle. And as an ex-geography teacher, I can tell you that every kid from age probably 9 up to 16 does the water cycle. That's a map. It is not thinking, and that's the difference. But we've been doing systems thinking and looking at their diagrams, and it's really interesting. And of course, the whole interdisciplinary, interconnected way the world works, or some people call it holistic. The one that we've really added is about understanding change because we've noted that people really don't understand how change happens, both at an individual, at a group, and at an institutional level, or even a societal level. And there are a lot of assumptions and myths around that. The one that's my favorite, of course, is that all you have to do is raise awareness and bingo. And then, of course, futures thinking, because of what we're interested in terms of agency, hope, and moving forward, thinking about the future is important. And then this whole idea about it all being relational and the practices within that. So, who do we gather from? And this, when I started looking at this actually horrified me, but it explains why there is no one model. So for participants, we use a range of tools here. We talked about the celebration events. Action learning sets are very powerful, where you don't give advice, where it's more like a counseling session, really, where you're listening and prodding and encouraging people to think for themselves. But one of the interesting things is the attitudinal surveys. You might start out, these are not surveys where we have a preset design or theory about what we want to prove. This is really more of an open-ended thing. By the time you do them, as we've done now, 3 of them, and you get thousands and thousands of students, you've actually come to a survey that has an insight to a system or a society. So the scale of these things starts to impact across. The ones that I bolded are the ones I really think are very powerful tools. Sorry, let's go back and forward. Critical incidences is a really powerful thing that I didn't really understand at first until I saw them in action. When people did something that really surprised them and others. So, for example, students who turn around to a school having done Young Changemakers for a year turned around to the school in the coming academic year and said, "Well, are we doing that again then?" And the teacher said, "No, we're doing it with new students." And they said, "No, we want to do it again." That was a critical incident that showed us that these students wanted to carry on learning, carry on practicing, carry on developing their ideas. Cycle of change, you can find all this on just Google cycle of change. It's an amazing thing, really helps you understand where people might be. And then there's a whole piece of research on the yes but stage when people have acknowledged that there's a problem, but they can find all the reasons why they don't want to do it. And the language that people start to give you really helps you understand where they might be. In the society and systems, I'm just going to go over this adoption of innovation curve because I think it's really helpful. Some of you may know this. Although Rogers says he invented this, he didn't. It's been around over 100 years. It comes from statisticians in the early 1900s. But what he did was actually start to think about the groupings in here. So some of you may recognize some of these terms like early adopters. Pioneers is another word for innovators, and traditionalists is another word for laggards. So the first black and white diagram shows you the accumulative adoption of an idea or a product or a change. And theoretically, the top, across the top, above the word saturation, maybe or even below it, might be a line that is the whole of society or the whole of the segment that you're targeting. So it could be drivers, for example. So there are some fantastic examples where people have used this. The adoption of seat belts, for example, was one of those. And there's a sort of a tipping point that people talk about. Some people think it's somewhere in the early adopters or the early majority. Other people put in progressive policy making that encourages more of the mainstream adopters to take that research on. The best example I know of is how down the street the adoption of the recycling bins happens and who follows who. It's amazing. And that's a classic example. The colourful graph here is the same, but instead of time across the bottom, these are the five areas and the numbers of people in each of those five groupings. Those numbers change all the time, so I wouldn't stick to those. And they vary from culture to culture, and they vary from innovation to innovation. So that's what they are. So how do we use it? We put it into all of this stuff into a whole school approach and an audit tool. And just to explain what that audit tool looks like, it looks like this. So you start with all of the domains that are in every school or institution. You have subdomains, and the one I've given here is the vision mission one. And the difference here is that the boxes are empty. They are not a tick box, and we haven't preset what that experience should look like. We're not prejudging. The school or the people doing this write in what they think they've done. So, for example, as a vision and mission statement, they might say they have consulted on it and have got a draft. That might be what they write in there. If they've actually got it approved and it's gone through everything, they might put it there. Expert might be they've tested it and revised it. So that just gives you examples of how we've been doing it and all of the models that we use. There's no one. We have, thank you to George, a new evidence hub that you might find interesting. And here's the provocation question that we're hoping that you'll have go into breakout groups and have a chat about, because I think this is a big area and lots of us doing lots of different things. So thank you very much. If you want to ask me any other questions, please do. my email was there, and you'll be getting the slides. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. That was fascinating. And hopefully now everyone can have a chance to talk about those particular areas in their breakout rooms. So you should shortly see an invitation on the screen. It will be lightning short, I'm afraid, but I hope you get a chance to talk about some of the ways in which you might be doing this in your setting or in your workplace.
So, Claire and Artie, do you want to just give us a sentence about what you just had as a conversation? Nice to see you, other Claire. Sorry, I'm Claire G and Artie, who are in room one, I think.
We were talking about the main thing we talked about was the difficulty of measuring that transformation that might happen when your view changes, and you might not be able to measure it immediately after a session that you've delivered or a resource that you've created. And I think that's quite pervasive across this whole area. Is that fair, Artie?
It's just fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to add to that, the way I've always dealt with it is in a holistic way. It's about personalized learning towards holistic development of a range of skills which align with a person's aspirations and knowledge and everything else. And that is a systemic way of dealing with it, which kind of tries to deal with all these agendas: personal, social, academic, career development, employability, sustainable development goals in an integrated way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, great. And it moves it from someone deciding what it is you're supposed to learn or achieve to you, the person, being center of that. Great, thank you. Room two, was there Kathy, you were in that room. Is there anyone else here?
Rich, can I hand over to you?
Hi, Rich.
Hi all. Yeah, we were coming from a range of different perspectives, I think. So we were saying about often the time being a challenge, that particularly if you're external, that you might only be with a group not very many times, and therefore it's can you actually get any sense of what's happening in long-term change? And perhaps as well was mentioned, it's even with students that they might just tell you what you think you want to hear, rather than actually what they might actually be thinking. And the other point was around sort of agency and whether if they have improved some awareness and knowledge, does that actually mean that it leads to any significant change for those young people?
Good points. Good points. I mean, the whole point about, yeah, being with young people and them, I mean, it's how you design that intervention, that evaluation. And what we've been doing is that they do it not with the teacher and not with us, and they do it online, and it's anonymous. And I think we get a lot from that, and even their reflection journals are anonymous. And that's it's for them, but it's really helpful for us. So when they do the surveys again, it's anonymous. Eventually, we can track it back and write their certificate. But yeah, and I wouldn't do it with younger kids because they really are out to, be nice to you. But 13-year-olds onwards, yeah, I'm not sure they're still wanting to be nice to you. Okay, room three. Thank you for that, Rich. Anyone?
I'll just
Yeah.
well, I raised the point. One of my challenges, I'm from a university and working with schools and teachers and doing projects in that way, getting responses from teachers or from their classes is a challenge.
Oh, tell me about it.
Understandably, yeah.
Yeah, we stumbled across something recently where we couldn't get hold of them at all. And then we said, would you be on a webinar? Which Claire G ran over there, was her idea. And my goodness, they said some amazing things. And suddenly they all turned up. It was like, oh, they want a webinar, but they don't want to chat or email something back. That was amazing. But we do know some of us do say they want to be part of research projects, but maybe that's not working for you, Amanda. Anyone else from another group? I think there are about 5 groups.
Happy to go next.
Okay, thank you, Candela.
That's all right. I think it was 2 main things for us. The first one connected to what you all have been saying. I think maybe survey fatigue.
Oh, yeah.
So, even when we take time in seminars, for example, in universities, which is where I work, then you get the results, and even though you saw them, they were in theory completing the survey. You get 11% of the cohort only have completed it. And Nicole was saying that it probably is because we haven't taught them that this is part of the learning process, they don't feel it, and therefore they don't use that or don't take that opportunity. But Claire was also saying that working externally, trying to facilitate this for universities, is very difficult to get schools to gather data. And then, but we are aware that we're all so stretched, probably even worse in schools than at universities. And that's probably why there's no time for data gathering and reflection on the data.
Yeah. Yeah, no, all of those are true. Thank you for that. And that's Claire from Spain, right? Claire.
Yeah, yes, sorry, not working with
We've got two Claire
universities,
Gs.
with schools, but yeah, absolutely, that kind of sense of needing to knowing that the impact of when you actually do survey the community, knowing how powerful it is, that when they actually see the results of that evidence in front of them, and at the same time having that tension that, you know, trying to shoehorn it into the right bit of the academic year, when's the right time to do those things, that's a tension.
Yeah. It's also a culture change. You know, if you're trying to do competencies with them, where you're then going to feed them back what they've have achieved in their year, that's a culture change for them, because most of their evaluation stuff they do at school is guessing what the teacher wants, or guessing what the GCSE wants, or the A level wants, and this is completely different. So it's a change. Candela, we did meet, didn't we, at the transformative learning thing? Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Any more? We've just gone past, so do feel if you have to rush off for your next session, don't feel embarrassed. But we've just gone past the 1:45 thing.
And can I just leap in to say thank you? We have gone over a little bit, so apologies, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and contributing. As always, there's always too little time, and we could have spent a lot longer discussing, but I hope it's been useful for you today. And just a quick note on our upcoming learning lunch, which is going to be on the 5th of next month. We've got Andrew Hadley who's the director of the Centre of International Learning and Leadership, a training and consultancy company which promotes international thinking, values and skills in education and employment. And he's going to come to talk to us about the Erasmus Plus project. So really, how much do we know about the Erasmus Plus project and its launch in 2027, and also all the questions around funding around it. So that should be a really, really interesting session. We hope you'll come back again and join us. But Anne, thank you so much for all the provocations and for all of that really interesting background on frameworks and ways to go about evaluation. Thank you very much.
I mean, and if anyone wants to write to me about, any of those models or techniques that we use, please feel free to do that.
Fantastic. And we'll share the slides. They'll be up on our Shared World webpage. So thank you very much, everyone, for giving up your lunch. Lovely to see you all.